morning.
I'm the other Diane. Be a princess, be the little Diane Jr.
Diane squared.
Diane squared. So I'll be talking to you about a little bit about the site preparation, just so we'll talk about it a little bit in depth more. But I just want to give you like a little bit of information before we start the whole process, and then we'll talk about the foundation. So first off, when you are looking for a spot to build your home, you want to find the ugliest spot because you're going to make it beautiful with your cob house. So it's recommended that you camp there. Even, you know, if you had the perfect setup where there's already a house on your land, you can watch your land for a year. It's recommended that you know where the floodplains are, where the best sun is. So it's important to know your land first. You want to make sure if you're going to use solar access to have your house south facing. So this is south-ish right there. So you've noticed we've got a solar panel out in the middle of the field. You can put windows in the front of your house to access that solar, all that solar access, because when the sun comes in, it heats up the floors and radiates all that heat. So south facing is also a good tip to build your home. You also want to build on the slope. Keep in mind we are building with mud. It soaks up water. So you want to make sure you have good drainage. This house here, it sits on a slope. So you can back it up to ideally a north wall, the north hill. So when the water comes down, you want to divert the water around the house, and I'll talk about trenching in a few minutes. But if you could have it on a slope, this ideally you want this to come down as well. So level off here and then down. That way it gives that natural drainage away from the house. We'll go over this a little bit more, like the AC and the heating. When you set your pipes, all your utilities, the most important things that need to go in first are your water and the geothermal for your air. You want to have AC. So, but we'll go over that a little bit more in depth later on in the workshop. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of information from the beginning. So, to start your cob house, you have to build drainage because, as I said, we're building with mud. We don't want all that water to come up and destroy our walls. So, we have to dig a trench. Now, depending on the area that you live in, such as like in the northern areas, you have to find out your frost line. In Kentucky, it's about 2 feet deep. That's where your frost line is, because you don't want, frost heave. And that's at the 2 feet line. It is a consistent temperature. So northern areas a little bit deeper, depending on your frost line. So you want to build it 2 feet across and 2 feet down if you're in Kentucky. You want to make it in a horseshoe shape. So this house here, you have the drain that comes along under the foundation and wraps around the back, the north wall, and come around the other side underneath the foundation. This picture here, it has it all around, but then it also has a drain at the southern part where it naturally slopes, and it has a catch system in the ground. So you have your slope, it comes down and it drains. You can either drain it out into like the free air, or just into like a wetland, or just as long as that it's sloped and that it's draining away from the house. You don't want to keep it up by the house because, like I said, I'm going to keep on reiterating, it is mud. It will suck it right up, even though cob can absorb a great amount of moisture. If it's too much, if for too long, you're going to get just a pile of mud.
Excuse me, you mentioned the 2 foot by 2 foot. So, are you talking about for the drainage, you're going 2 foot down, 2 foot wide, and then this is gravel?
That's what all these are, right?
Yeah, this is the trench, but it's most important when you have it on your perimeter of your house, because you don't want, you're trying to build a little dry island for your house to sit on, like a little moat around the perimeter of the house. You can build it underneath your foundation, or you can go on the outside of your foundation, just as long as you have a dry area for your house to sit on. This house, like I said, it sits on the it sits on the trench, like around here. So that's for all the water to drain out of. Yeah.
So if you had that around the outside of the house, would you still be building a trench for the foundation also?
Well, when you want to have the gravel, you want to have some gravel underneath your rock foundation. If you do it around your house, it depends on how big your house is too. Because if it's really small, you're gonna just have all rock. You want to give it that trench underneath the foundation, because if there's an earthquake, that house can move with that gravel. So that gives it that more stability, in a sense, when there's an earthquake. So some people have built a trench around the house, and then they build another trench underneath the foundation, just for the extra protection.
But you don't get settling issues over time.
Well, I will go over that in a second on the settling, because when you so you'll run your corrugated pipe. That's your drainage system. You want to put a little bit of gravel down first, tamp it down really well. Then you want to set your corrugated pipe in the horseshoe shape, or all around your trench, and that drains the water out into the open or away from the house. And to avoid like stuff getting into the little holes of the corrugated pipe, you can wrap landscaping. A landscaping cloth around it. A little bit later on, when you guys have time, there's some pipe coming out from this area that's wrapped in landscaping cloth. So stuff doesn't get in, and so it doesn't clog up the drain. You can also use urbanite, which is crushed up concrete, like sidewalks. So that's another. But for your bottom layer, where your corrugated pipe's going to go on, you want that to be pea gravel or other types of gravel, so you can tamp it down. That's even. So when you lay your pipe, now this gets a little bit tricky. This is where you have to maybe do some math. But so when you have your house and you have the trench going around, you want the middle part of the back wall to be slightly higher than the rest, because you want the water to drain. If it's level, the water's not going to go anywhere. So you want that pipe to, in the middle, in the back wall, you want it to slightly go down and then slightly go down, so it can drain out. And you can test that by pouring some water and see if it comes out the end. So it's really important, because you don't want your water sitting in your pipes. You want it to naturally flow out. So after you put your pipe in, you want to tamp down every 6 inches. And that's where you get the set. You don't want it to. You want it to be tight. Okay. It's not going to crush the pipe, because since it's like it's a circle, so it's got that natural arch. So when you have stuff come on top of it, it's a compression. So that weight, when it comes down, it goes to the side. And that's how we'll talk about that a little bit later, about arches and how the power of the arch is very strong. So don't worry about crushing your pipe. So you'll have keep on tamping down every 6 inches, and then you'll have like a rubble trench like this. Rock. So when you start building your foundation, you'll see here there's rocks. You can find those on the side of the road. So you can use that type. You can use leftover rocks from like a construction site. You can go up to, hey, I don't really want your rock, but do you want to get rid of it? So kind of, sometimes as contractors, like, well, you can have it for, you can get it for cheap.
Usually they have to take it to a landfill
Yeah.
too much of it, so you're doing them a favor.
Right, right. So you can take it
Just
away
ask.
from them.
All you can do is say no.
Right. And that's an easier way to make it more inexpensive, you know, when you're building your. Or if you have lots of money, you can go out to a regular landscaping company and buy rocks there. But you can find some really pretty ones on the side of the road, nice siding. So yeah, do some research on where you can pick up some nice big rocks. Make sure since they're on the side of the road or wherever you get them from, you're gonna have to make sure they're clean, not like spotless, but you want to get off all that gunk, especially if it's like coming from a construction site and it's leftovers. It's gonna have like concrete on it or just gunk. So you want to use a wire brush, clean it off really good. That way, when you put your lime mortar on, it's gonna adhere to the rock better. And especially if you're going to face the rock out, not toward in the house, you want those to look nice. So yeah, keep in mind when you're putting in your rock, you want the prettier side on the outside, unless if you want the pretty rock on the inside. But keep in mind the floor will cover up some of that rock. So you want to put your biggest pieces down first. Now for a first-story home, you want the first course of your foundation, which is the bottom layer. You want that to be the largest, the widest. So 24, let's see, 24 inches. Now keep in mind, this is for a first-story home. 24 inches across. Okay, that's the width of your foundation. If you don't have rocks that are that large, you could do like a small, like a rock wall, and it can have a gap in the middle. Let me explain a little bit better. And you can look at these visuals afterwards. So what we did on one of these walls is you have two walls, okay? And then, but they're standing up. So instead of laying down, we stand them up, and then we stand another rock on this side, so you have like a little trench of like a rock wall, and you can have a gap in the middle and fill it up with the gravel if you don't have those large rocks.
What about minimum height?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. So after you do your first course, you want to lay it down dry to the gravel. And then when you put your foundation in, you want to take your time on this because this is your foundation, the most important part of building your cob house. So what you'll do is you'll get your rocks all laid out, and it's like putting together a puzzle. You have to figure out which rocks fit together the best. You're going to have gaps, and you're going to fill that in with like lime mortar, and I'll talk about that in a second. But you want to lay them out first because you don't want to be hauling rocks like, okay, no, this doesn't fit, no, this doesn't fit. So you want to try to get them laid out the best as you can. Figure out, okay, these rocks go together, these rocks go together. So it's like putting together a puzzle for your first layer. You put down your first course, and then you'll add your lime mortar, which I'll go over in a second, to piece the rocks together. So not on the bottom of the rock, you lay it down, but then when you put your rocks together, you're going to put lime mortar in between those. So, as I said, the first layer is 24 inches across, and then when you put your second course of rock on, it's going to be 18 inches across. So, what you're trying to do is create an artificial shape of the tree. So, your bottom layer is your widest, and it's going to go up like this, like a tree trunk. The bottom is the widest, and it's going to slowly go up like a tree. You're building a tree. Because cob is, it's all compressed. So you've got a lot of weight coming down. So you want to have a wide foundation, that way it can hold up that cob. For the more ambitious people that want to do a second story, you have to start with a wider base, 36 inches across. Then that's your first course, and then your second course will be 24 inches. And so you'll build that up up to your second level. And then you won't put rock, obviously, on the second story, but the cob will go in 18 inches. So you're cutting off 6 inches from, so you have 36, then you have your 24 inches of rock, and then 24 inches of cob going up to your second story. So then you go in 6 inches. What you can do is, so you have your wall, so you have your 24 inches, and then you have 18, but you can shave that 6 inches in, so leave the cob going straight up, but on the interior wall, you can, so here's your 24, and then you go in, make a lip, keep on going up like that, so you can have your joist, your floor joist for your second floor to sit on there. So that's important. You want a floor on your second floor.
How high can you go with your first level?
Your first story,
yeah, how high up can you go before it's considered a second level? I mean, like if you wanted a little bit taller ceilings on the inside, then, but not a second level, for instance.
Oh, so like cathedral ceilings?
Not that high,
but
just, like higher than, say, 7-8 foot on the inside.
Right. Well, so like these walls are, I think they're like 8, 9 feet. No, the ones in that Cobb cottage are like, these are going to be 9 feet. Okay. 9 feet tall. So the most important thing is to have support. So load-bearing walls. So how tall are you wanting to make them?
Well, I'm just saying if you went like, say, like 9 or 10 foot high on the inside, that's what it would be inside of the building. So by the time you reach 8 foot, should you be going in? Or at what point should that wall go from 24 inches to 18 inches?
So you can have them, 9 feet high, and that's no problem. As long as you, 9 feet, 10 feet high, that's fine. Yeah, you can go that high.
It'd still be a one-story building with that proper foundation.
Yeah.
And did you say you're keeping the wall the same thickness that entire way up, or
you have let's see. Okay, so you have your first story. So you have 24 inches of cob. Okay.
All the way to 8 feet.
All the way, all the way up. So you have your 36, and then you go in for your second course of foundation. You go in 24, and then you keep it at 24.
That's for a 2-story.
For a 2-story, yes. So you keep it at 24 until you get up to wherever you want to have your second story, and then once you go, once you decide, okay, this is the point where I want to stop on my walls and do the second story. So this outside wall is going to keep on going straight up, but the interior wall is going to go in 6 inches to make that 18 inches of wall on the second story.
And then it's 18 all the way to the top of that wall.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, another important thing is when you're laying your foundation, you never want to have vertical seams. I have a little picture here, but I don't know if you can. But, so that means, so your first layer, you have 2 rocks, and they're butting up next to each other. So there's a seam right there. When you lay your second course down, you never want to put 2 rocks on top of that. So you have 2 rocks here. You want to lay 1 rock to cover that seam. So you never want to have 2 rocks, and then 2 rocks, and then 2 rocks. You like stagger them. You never want to have, because all that weight could make them fall in. Another important point, when you're building your foundation, okay? So you have your foundation here. When you get to, okay, so go back to your question about how high it should be. Standard, it, if you have gutters, you don't have to make it that high because basically you're making a good, what they call good cap and boots. So the cap is the roof, the boots would be the foundation. So if you have gutters, it's going to catch the backsplash. So the boots serve as to catch the backsplash from the rain. So you want to go up to like knee height on your foundation. You can go a little bit higher if you want more rock, but about knee height is good, like 18 inches. Yeah, it depends
Are
on
these less
how
than
tall
that?
you are.
these.
Well, see, I'm looking
Well,
at
that's true.
this right
Well,
here.
this is an
That's a
interior
great
wall. This will be an interior wall, but
Okay.
and there, I mean, on this wall, I mean, it's a little bit shorter than knee height, but like I said, when you have your roof's going to go out 2 more feet.
Right.
So, you know,
So,
can-
but you, on the foundation, in the end, you end up cobbing over, well, or lime over here.
well,
Or do you not want to do
you don't. You want to keep your rocks, you know, where you can see them and make them nice. But the mortar goes in between the cracks. It doesn't go over the rock. I don't think I've ever seen a cob house with lime over the rock because the rock you want to show that natural beauty of, you know, the rocks inside. But since this is an interior wall, you don't have to build it that high. This is to avoid wicking moisture up into the wall. You
Okay.
don't want cobs sitting directly on the ground, so you have to have something.
So,
like
not to do with aesthetics, you're saying it has to do with, you don't want the lime or whatever will wick
Well,
water.
the lime is really good for, you know, it's antiseptic, antifungal, antibacterial. So it can absorb a lot of moisture and release it. I mean, it's a lot more lime that you're going to be using, and since lime is caustic, you know, you want to use it when it's necessary. But I think it's
But it is, or are you saying it's a negative? Let's say that aesthetically you prefer to have cob all the way across. Or are you saying that's great aesthetically, but it's got bad properties in terms of it will wick moisture?
no, no. So if you have your cob wall sitting on the ground, it will wick up moisture because
Okay.
it's mud. So you want to have rock there to avoid wicking the moisture up.
Okay.
Yeah, and have kind of like a barrier between the ground and the cob.
But the line, if you put the lime plaster all the way down to the ground, that wouldn't, it's fine, right? It's not gonna wick from the ground.
Yeah, I'm getting lost in
No.
this because it. Are you?
Are you
Yeah,
talking
I
about
understand
putting-
you have to have the rock base,
Yeah.
and you got to be up. You do the 2 layers, and but once you have that rock base, if you put lime mortar on the outside and moisture contacts the house, is that moisture gonna wick up?
No, lime absorbs it and it releases it, so it's breathable. So that's no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, because you use the
Cob is
lime in the
breathable.
mortar, so that's no problem. Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got a question back here.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Diane, I will ask about the second floor here. Yes, we are living. So, according to the second floor, this is like about 6 inches.
Yeah, it's 5 inches.
5 inches. So, how
So
different
it's-
this is?
We were
Can be
doing
a first floor
forms.
also. It can be a first floor
Can I
house.
speak to that,
Yeah.
Diane? The timber framing on the second floor is the load bearing. So that's why it can be as thin as you want it to be. Because we're not depending on the cob to hold up the building. So,
Because
what
you have all
she-
the beams.
right, so what she's talking about is the dimensions that you need.
To build a pure cob house.
Can we make this as a first floor house like this? This is you know, with the plans and everything. Just 1 floor and like this.
The timber frame with the infill, then you lose the you lose the thermal mass for heating and cooling.
Right, but you have the thermal mass on the second floor, that would be my question. Because it is thinner.
I won't do that again, it's too thin.
Okay.
Leslie, can you give us your experience with what happened
Yeah.
when you were up there and then went down
Yeah.
to the thicker walls?
It's much colder upstairs.
Right.
Yeah. Especially when the wind was, is that what you mean? Yeah.
The other
Especially when
night.
the wind's blowing.
And then
You know?
somebody told me about coming down this morning, was that?
Oh, that was
me
Lori.
this
Okay,
morning.
so, can you speak to that?
I guess the door was open a little bit overnight, and we all like kind of, okay, good morning, and I stuck my head in the downstairs, and it was like someone had a space heater going. It was warm, and the sun had only been up for an hour or so. It was like shockingly warm in comparison.
So when you have that, cob is not really insulated, it's a thermal mass.
Right.
So when you have that thick
The thicker it
18-inch
is.
wall, the sun gradually heats it up and puts it in there
And it
during the
holds
day.
it too.
So it equalizes it. And I'll tell this one story and then I'll give the show back to Diane M. I knew a friend from Kenya I used to work with, and I told her, you know, I was building with cob, and she reacted this way: "Oh, the cob buildings are so nice and cool in the summer, because it also absorbs the cool of the night, and then brings that back into the building during the day."
But the thermal mass thing, the whole idea is over a certain period of time, you take in heat energy and then you release it. But would that not be location dependent? Where, and plus whether you have a southern wall or didn't have a southern wall or whatever.
Yeah, and that's why Diane was speaking to siting. Can
Yeah,
you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's important to have it south facing because you are gaining access to the solar sun, or to the sun. Some people they do hybrids. So if you want to increase the R value, you put straw bales in the north wall. I'd recommend to go to a straw building workshop, which I'm going to do for my house, because in some areas, now I don't know a lot about the building codes, but I did hear a story of this guy running into these challenges on, okay, so it's cob, it's not insulated. You can't build your house because it's not
Right.
efficient. So you have to find other ways to build that R value up. And so one of the ways is to put straw bales in the north wall, and that bumps up the R value.
And you also need to, I would imagine that depends on where you're building. You are going to need to find out about building code requirements.
Yeah, yeah.
Before you even start doing anything.
Right. I know in this county, the building codes aren't as strict, and so you can get away with a cob building or straw bale. But yeah, make friends with your building inspector,
Absolutely.
because it depends on each county. Even though, you know, like Kentucky, they operate under International Building Code,
They all do.
but, you know, some counties are a little bit more strict than others.
Right.
But
Yeah.
one question before you go any further though. Like, let's say that you're building a house, you don't have real access to sun. Okay. Now, the thickness of the wall is that going to be, if you're not taking on a lot of heat energy, are you really shooting yourself in the foot? I mean,
Because you're losing all the sun, and that really helps because cob is like a radiant heat. So if you build a rocket stove, or if you have a wood stove and you build it into the cob, that cob will absorb that heat and radiate heat. So yeah, you're better off because it will soak up the energy, the heat during the day, and release it at nighttime. And that sun, when it comes to the south, you know, through the windows, it heats up the floor, and so that heat comes up.
So you really need to think about the sources of thermal energy the house takes on.
Yeah, because you are losing a lot through that.
Because it truly is passive solar. So
Yeah.
that's just like our house. That's
Right,
isn't it
yeah.
still?
Well, we've got a great location.
But if you were in a,
Forget
like,
Right,
the
you
southern.
don't wanna build a cob in a.
Well, I'm thinking about like the
would
thing
you
I
want
wanted to
to
build up on
expose yourself to the
the
southern
hill.
If you don't have sun, it
because
doesn't
you'd be
work.
taking on that heat all the time?
Well,
Or do you
Can we
build
do
your
one
you
roof
gotta
question
have
at a
another
time so
source to
everyone
take
can
on.
get the benefit of the answer? Can you speak up just a little bit?
I was saying, so like in the southern climate, do you want to make yourself accessible to the sun as much, or would you want to build your roof out so that you only get the sun in the winter months? Is that instead of taking on all that southern exposure in the heat when it's so hot?
Your winters get
Yes, in the,
Well,
in,
in southern Alabama, you get probably 2 weeks of where it's really cold down where we're at. Other than that, I mean, that could be heated with the rocket stove, like you're speaking. But otherwise, would you want to expose yourself to the southern sun continually?
Well, I know. So I visited a house in South Carolina, and it was hot. It was humid, and it was south facing. When I went in, it was like 20 degrees cooler. I mean, Cobb. What it'll do is, so if you're south facing, that Cobb will absorb that heat, but you won't. But if you have like curtains in the front to
Right.
shield from getting that Cobb in the
In the
floor.
tile, the floor, and what
Right,
have you.
but in the evenings when it gets cool, I would imagine it heats up the house on the inside. So I would say that you still want that solar access because like in the evenings it'll get cooler. It's just and then plus if you're having if you're using solar panels, I mean that's separate from the house,
Right.
but you can use the curtains to if you don't want it. I mean it is cool on the inside. If it's hot out and it gets humid here, you go inside a Cobb house and it's south face. You know, it's has a lot of solar access. It's still cool on the inside.
That is wonderful.
Is
Yeah.
it true that it regulates the temperature? So if it's hot or cold outside, it kind of balances it out?
Yeah.
To
So that Cobb will absorb all that heat
Yeah.
and it'll keep it in,
Yeah.
and in the evening it slowly releases it out. So
Okay.
it's really good for
Yeah.
balancing that out. So the summers.
Do we want to talk that much about the properties of Cobb during the foundation?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So we're getting off topic.
It's off the
Yeah. Sorry.
It's kind of hard to not answer every question,
So,
but it's outside the scope of
yeah.
this lecture.
So one thing I want to add is we don't want to. You want to avoid using concrete when you're using the mortar because concrete that wicks up moisture, which creates mold. So it's better to use lime because that it sucks it in and it releases it, and it's like I said, it's antiseptic, antibacterial, and antifungal, which is good when you want to avoid mold. So that's another thing to keep in mind is you want to avoid concrete. So the mortar that you'll be using in between the rocks. So you have 1 part lime putty. Now the lime that you'll be using is not garden lime. This is like the construction heavy duty lime, hydrated lime, which comes in powder form. So when you're making lime putty, you want to add the powder to a gallon of water. Slowly use protection because it is caustic. So goggles and gloves, and you want to make it to like a Greek yogurt consistency, like a putty. So really nice and creamy. So you want 1 part. So you have like a little coffee container we use, or a sour cream. As long as all your measurements are consistent. So if you want to use sour cream things, just use that for your measuring all the time. So 1 part lime putty, 3 parts mason sand, not beach sand because sand from the beach, they're like marbles. So they roll around easier and they can't really interlock with other pieces of sand. Mason sand is more coarse, more rugged. It has sharper edges, so it can interlock with other pieces of sand. And then, so 3 parts of that, and then a 1/3 part grog, which is basically crushed up brick. like clay. Like you can get that at like a pottery store. They have that left over from doing their like demonstrations. So it's leftover clay, or yeah. So that's what basically what grog is. Or you can take those like red bricks that you can get at like Home Depot and crush them up yourself, but you have to really get them fine.
Grog?
Grog, Grog.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but it's easier just to get it from a pottery store, you know, or studio.
Can you tell the parts of each one
So
again?
it's 1 part lime putty, 3
Is
parts.
that the dry one part of
The lime
or
putty is like the
after you've
Greek.
already mixed it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll be
Okay.
demonstrating that
Yeah.
what how to do the lime putty.
Yeah.
So after you make the lime putty, one sour cream thing of lime putty,
Mhm.
and then 3 parts of the mason sand,
Mhm.
and then a third of that sour. If you're using a sour cream thing,
Oh,
a third part of that.
Oh. Okay.
So you have all the numbers like so. If you take 1 part lime putty, 3 parts mason sand, and then 1/3 of the grog, and then you mix that all together, and then you'll put it in between your seams, and that's your
And
lime.
is the lime putty one water to one lime?
So that's
Oh no, you just mix it to
yeah.
a
So you'll have like a bucket of like if you want to take this bucket here, you fill it up with like halfway, and you just add the lime in little by little.
Yeah.
To get it that it's like cooking. You gotta really
You'll
feel
watch
it out.
like change.
It's more
change
organic.
states.
You gotta
Like,
no, this is too thin. This is like skim milk, or no, this is more like putty.
More
Greek
cooking, less
yogurt.
rocket science.
What's that?
More cooking, less rocket science.
That's right. It's all flowing organic. So, I didn't even use my notes. Woohoo!
Very frequent.
I think that's.
Very forgiving.
Just don't
I think
splash
that's
in
it.
It is chemical lime.
Yep.
I like the neutralization of vinegar.
Oh, another thing to remember. So say like you're going to build a 10 by 10 a room, like a little garden shed or something. So keep in mind, if you want a real 10 by 10 room, you have to add on 2 feet to the wall. So you have your 10 by 10, you have to add out 2 feet here, 2 feet here. So in reality, it's a 14 by 14. You have 2 feet on this side, 2 feet on this side, 2 feet on that side. So if you want a true 10 by 10 room, you have to make it larger.
right, you start from the inside out.
Yep. Yep. Oh, there was another thing brought up. Becky B is a really good resource. The Cob Builder's Handbook, I think is what it's called. In there, she touches about moisture barrier in between the foundation and the cob. That is a bad idea because you don't want to block any moisture because cob needs to breathe, and lime that's also naturally breathable. So you don't want to put anything between the cob and the rock foundation because you need to let the walls breathe. You don't want to block anything out because if you imagine if you would put like sealant on your cob walls, and if a leak happened, it's going to hold all that water in, and then the walls just going to crumble. Over in England, when they first started repairing and renovating these old cob houses, they would use stucco or cement, and so there was no problem when they put it on. Oh, it looks great. But then there was a leak, and these walls started just tumbling down because it would slowly take in that water and then finally just crumble down because it can hold a lot of moisture, but it can't hold it for long. So, but if you let it breathe, it gives it a chance to absorb it and release. Yep. So, are we ready for Diane?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we ready to start working?
Yeah, I think that we could do a demonstration of mixing lime mortar. We have some lime putty.
So yeah, you'll get to actually see it in action now, rather than just hearing about it, seeing. We can do a demonstration. So, are there any questions as far as foundation goes?
Do you have to use rock for foundation?
Some people use cinder blocks. So,
But wouldn't that be that cement, that
yeah.
mold?
So you got, but we did that. We used cinder blocks over on this. As you came in, there was some stuff that was covered with tarp, and we used cinder blocks there. People have used them, but there's always that chance of it wicking up moisture. As long as
waterproof that it sweats and you have mold problems.
But if you get the broken up cement from a,
well, that would be your trench.
okay,
Yeah.
you wouldn't use that in the foundation.
No, not the foundation. So the urbanite you would put in your trench,